The tale of the Vermillion bird. Have you ever flown a kite? I have. Well, that's not exactly true. It's more like the kite flew me. Let me tell you how it happened. It was back in the 1970s, and in those days I could still walk pretty well. I was born with cerebral palsy. I was in Dover with a few friends. My uncle David lived a few miles out of town, so one day we decided to call and see him. Billy, I did not know you were coming. Come in all. He showed us to a cozy living room that had a breathtaking view that looked across the French coast. You've just missed Abby. She's gone on a shopping spree to London, but she'll be back tomorrow. Abby was his wife. I'm sorry she's not here, Malcolm. Malcolm is looking to buy a house, so we'll be here for a few days. Yes, as close to the sea as possible, said Malcolm. Me and John just tagged along, I said. I only came to keep an eye on them, John said, as he punched me in the arm. I rubbed a muscle on my right arm. We'll be back to visit before we go home. David walked towards the well-stocked bar in the corner of his living room. You'll have a drink? Just a small one. It's only 10:30 in the morning, I laughed. He gave us a whiskey each. You're on holiday, aren't you? And anyway, none of you are driving. He put mine on the side table and moved it close to me, produced a straw and put it in my glass. I always keep straws in the house. I'm sorry to say that I must leave in half an hour. I've organised a stunt kite demonstration, and that's hard to say. His hobby was flying model planes and kites. We'll be here for a few days anyway. Why don't you all come along? When we're finished, I'll show you around. I looked at Malcolm, who nodded. Okay. I watched as David painted control loops in the sky with a stunt kite. It dove straight towards the grass to be rescued at the last moment as he hauled on one of the lines with his left hand. The long tail flapped loudly and brushed the grass as it balanced the Vermillion kite. He turned to us and asked, would anyone like to try flying it? What about you? He asked, pointing at me. Yes, I said, I'll have a go. I said, smiling. He knew that I could not hold the kite lines in my hands. But what if I lie on my back and you tied the lines to my ankles? I think that might work. Will you give it a go? He answered. It was one of those days that we all remember. The sun beating down from a clear blue sky. But because we were on top of the cliff, there was a strong breeze blowing, which made for ideal conditions. Of course, you must remember, I had never flown a kite in my life, never felt the pull of the wind. I lay on my back and held up my ankles, while David and John tied the lines to them. Do you really think this is a good idea? John asked, looking at the kite. It's rather large. Oh, it'll be okay, don't fuss, said Malcolm. Right, there we are, Billy. Ready? David walked downwind with the kite and held it aloft until the wind took it. It soared into the air and quickly reached 50 feet or more. It was brilliant to have full control of the kite. It was alive in my hands, feet. I bent my right knee, pulling with all my might, and the great Vermillion bird, that's what I had named it in my head, swooped and looped until I straightened my leg again and it levelled off. A stronger gust of wind caught it, then up and up the bird went another 20 feet into the air. I started to be dragged along the ground, my head bumping along the grass. "David, hold on, it's too strong," I shouted as I twisted, looking for help, as he and a few others started to chase after me. The bird and I picked up speed. My backside no longer was in contact with the ground. The hair on the back of my head was being pulled as I tried to grip the ground with everything I could. Then nothing mattered anymore as my head banged against the rock and I lost consciousness. When I came to, my head was pounding and I was dizzy. There was acid coming up my throat and I vomited. I felt it going up my nose and running into my hair. I gagged and spat. I could hear the rush of wind and in the distance the sound of surf. I opened my eyes and everything was blue. A seagull flew past. It was flying upside down. Then I raised my head, but instead of seeing the sky, I saw waves breaking against the white cliff. When I looked to where my feet were, and just because I was slowly spinning in the air, I could see the Vermillion bird to which I was tied. No use panicking, I thought. At least it's a nice day. I felt something land on my right foot. I looked up. By now I knew I was upside down, dangling from the kite, to see the underside of a bobbing tail. The tail moved up and down as the gull got ready to let fly with something unpleasant. I was about to become a flying guano repository. "Get lost, bird," I shouted, but all I got back was a squawk and a wet, warm feeling run up the inside of my flared wranglers. Drifting, the blood rushing to my head, I wondered what would become of me. I had always wanted to travel, but like this. My arms were already becoming tired as I was holding them folded across my chest, so I let them relax and fall above my head. My fingers were tingling. I looked around. There, about 400 feet below me, was a perfect model of Dover Castle. I could see about 50 miniature people pointing up at me. My uncle and friends were no longer in sight. I must have been blown a mile or more by now, I thought. "Hello down there, someone call the Coast Guard," I shouted as I flew over the port and headed out to sea. I can't speak French. No mobile phones back then, but I saw a few people starting to run towards a red telephone box. My ankles started to ache. Luckily, the lines had been tied around the outside of my boots, but still I could feel the circulation in my feet being cut off, and my head was near bursting point. Squawk! That bloody seagull was back. Get away. Go on, Scoot. I waved my arms around and wiggled my hips. Get lost. The long tail of the kite swept across my face as the direction of the wind changed. I made a grab for it. I held as tight as I could and pulled with all my strength. My stomach lurched as the kite plummeted 100 feet before it righted itself. I was moving towards the coast again. This is it, I thought. This is my last look, the last thing on earth I'll ever see. A sense of perfect peace swept through me. No more struggling. I started to sing. There'll be bluebirds over. Squawk, I felt the weight as the seagull landed once more, this time on my left foot. I wiggled my hips and swung my arms with all my might. The seagull flapped its wings, trying to balance before giving up, and it took to the air once more. I grabbed hold of the Vermillion bird's tail once more and gave a mighty tug. The bird swung and dipped, this time falling faster as the wind let go of it. I looked up at the sea rushing toward me, and I saw a man standing on the stern of a small fishing boat. He was holding a gaff in his hand, reaching out to a boy. My hands were in the freezing sea by now. I sucked in my last breath on this earth and held it as my head went under. This is what it was like to be keel-hauled. My body was in the water up to my waist. I was shivering. Then, once again, I felt a jerk of the lines of my ankles as the wind took hold of the damp bird, and I was free of the sea once more and on my way up to the heavens. Grab on, the fisherman shouted, and held his gaff out to me. I tried to hold it as I flew past, but missed. Instead it snagged on my sleeve, tearing a great hole where it hung. I clawed at it with my left hand and finally got a grip on it as I started to gain height. Call for help. I can't last much longer, I called down to him. It was a beautiful summer's day. On the cliff top, crickets were singing, and the odd chalk-hilled blue butterfly fluttered by as Terence and Janet Marshall lay side by side on a red and green checkered picnic blanket. 3-year-old Robert had fallen asleep 20 minutes ago. Though this weather's fantastic. We're lucky you took this week, said Janet. Yeah. Rub some more of that lotion on my back. Terence sat up and looked around. Okay, but where is it? He said, looking under the edge of the blanket. Janet shook her head. There, just behind where you were lying. You remember? Where you sat it 10 minutes ago. She looked at her young son. You better put some more on Robert first. I don't want him getting burnt. She put her sunglasses back on. Man, she muttered. He squeezed some of the liquid into the palm of his hand, and then, dipping 2 fingers in, he started to gently apply it to Robert's forehead, cheeks, and nose. Robert gave a groan. No, he said in his sleep, pushing at his father's hands. There, all finished. Go back to sleep, little man, Terence whispered. He crawled behind Janet, opened the straps of her bikini, and squeezed some of the thick white lotion onto her back. He started to massage it in, rubbing from her spine out to her sides with both hands again and again. "Oh," she moaned, low in her throat, "that's so good." "Yeah, actually I'd been meaning to ask you for a while now. How would you feel about me chucking in banking and becoming a masseuse?" She laughed. "Go back to sleep. And anyway, I think you'd find that to become a masseuse, you would need to have a sex change." A bee was buzzing nearby. Robert sat up watching it as it zigzagged on its way. He reached and pulled a daisy, smelling it before setting it beside Janet, then bent and kissed her on the cheek. A butterfly fluttered past, and he reached out to catch it but missed. He stooped shakily because of the long grass and started after the butterfly with his hands grasping the air. A gust of wind carried the butterfly further from his grasp, just as he was about to catch it, and he squealed with delight. He was running as fast as his short legs could go. Another gust, and the butterfly was blown over the fence. He fell and got up again, squealing and yelling. He got down and reached through the fence. His head followed. He had to struggle to get his right leg through, but his left was no trouble at all. "Robert," Janet came awake. "Robert, where are you?" she shouted, getting up. "Terence, quick!" They both got up and ran. "We shouldn't have parked here," Janet thought. "Please, no." Robert was catching up with the butterfly again. He could nearly touch it. Another gust of wind lifted it into the sky, and his eyes followed it skywards. But then his attention shifted to something larger in the sky. "Kite!" he giggled and ran, pointing. "Robert, stop now. Stand still. Don't move," called Terence from 10 feet away. He hunkered down and with both hands out, palm down, he said, "Robert, sit down. I'm here and everything's okay. Don't be frightened." Still moving slowly toward his son, he climbed the fence. "Daddy, Mama, ook, kite, ook," Robert said, laughing, and started to run again. There was a loud cry as the child tripped on an outcrop of chalk. He bashed his head as he fell and disappeared from sight. For a moment Janet's heart was ice and her chest was going to explode. Her brain was consumed with the guilt that felt like fire from hell. Terence was no better. He could not see through his tears as he vomited on the grass. He tried to breathe, but the tightness in his chest wouldn't let him. A pain started creeping its way down his left arm. "Robert," they both yelled as one, and finally their limbs started moving. They both crawled to the edge of the cliff, and the updraft blasted them as they looked over. I was cold, tired, and close to giving up. It would be easier just to give in, drift away, never to wake, than to try to hold on to life. The fisherman had been the only person who had come near to rescue me. Now, what chance had I? "None," I shouted. I looked down and back at the fishing boat. He was following, but falling behind. The tail of the vermilion bird flapped with a loud rustling noise, and started to wrap itself around my waist. I grabbed it and pulled, which caused it to alter direction, and once more I faced the coast. At that moment the wind changed direction and started carrying me toward the cliff again, about 30 yards out from the coast now, and my eyes were starting to close. I heard someone yelling far away, "No!" I pushed my head back and tried to turn toward the sound. "Robert, no! Terence, go and get him! Hurry!" A woman's voice. 20 or so feet below the man and woman, I could see a young child lying on the narrow ledge. He wasn't moving. The man was holding the woman back. The top half of her body was over the edge. As she was trying to reach down, she had no chance of saving the child. She hit out at the man. The wind kept carrying her voices away from me, but I heard the man say, "Come at edge." I climbed down. I pulled hard on the tail of the bird and tried to bend my knees in the direction of the cliff face. I had to get down another 60 or 70 feet if I was going to stand any chance. The child had regained consciousness and was trying to stand. I could see the cliff crumble even with his small weight. The fellow had started down now, but there was no way that he could make it. "Go back," I yelled, pulling on the tail. Down I swooped, lower and lower. I held a fisherman's gaff in my right hand and the tail of the bird in the other. With my teeth I bit on the tail for extra grip. My feelings were like a swarm of wasps in my mouth, but I tried to ignore that minor irritation. Lower, lower, easy now, I thought, as I reached out with the gaff and hooked it into the back of the child's nappy and pulled. The child gave a scream of pain and panic. I let go of the bird's tail and gripped the gaff with both my hands, and hand over hand I pulled the crying, wiggling child to me and held him close in my arms. I hugged the child. He was bleeding where the gaff had hit him in the back, but I could see it wasn't deep. The main thing was that he hadn't fallen from the cliff. "But how I took you into greater danger," I thought. We were now about 30 feet from the ground and moving inland. Fields and hedgerows were passing below, the odd tree as well. The bird was slowing and dropping, although every now and again the wind would pick it up and we would gain height. "Shh, you're okay," I said to the child. "What's your name?" "Robert," he said, crying. "Well, Robert, I soon have you back with Mommy and Daddy, I promise. Look down there, I spy a house." In the distance I heard the whop whop of a helicopter. As we moved inland there were more and more trees. We were very low now, and when we came near a tree, my head passed through the leaves. The smell filled my nostrils and I felt hope blooming in my chest. "We're nearly home now, Robert, and we'll get nice and warm." The whoop whoop was louder now. The helicopter was coming to help us. "Look." We were swinging and spinning. I felt my back making contact with leaves and branches. There was the sound of cracking twigs and the louder snapping of breaking branches. I dropped the gaff and grabbed onto a branch and prayed as I hauled us into the heart of the chestnut tree. My ankles were still tied to the bird, But when we were caught within the branches, it sank to earth. We're safe. I hugged him tight. You said, we safe, yeah. I laughed and hugged him tighter. Fire and ambulance teams arrived together, and we were soon on the ground. The press held back, but managed to get some photographs. They interviewed me later when I was released from hospital. I had mild hypothermia and a cut in my arm where the gaff had caught me. Robert had a bad scrape on his lower back, also because of the gaff, but nothing more serious. He was soon back in his parents' arms. The end.